Welcome to this special podcast, sponsored by Murphy Business Sales Edison, New Jersey office, where your business aspirations meet expert guidance. Whether you're looking to sell your business or explore new acquisition opportunities, we are here to support you every step of the way. Join us as our hosts deep dive into small business topics which are relevant for buyers, sellers, and other transaction advisors in the ecosystem.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Looking at this massive stack of research on the desk today.
It is a literal mountain of paper.
It really is. I mean, we've got the 2026 outlooks from Deloitte, Morgan Stanley, Grata.
Plus PwC, McKinsey, and EY, all the heavy hitters.
Right, all of them. And honestly, reading through these, it feels a little bit like we're getting dispatches from two entirely different planets.
It is the absolute definition of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, because if you just, scan the headlines or maybe only read the front page of the Wall Street Journal, 2026 is totally shaping up to be the year of the mega deal.
Oh, absolutely. The 11-figure tech mergers.
Exactly. It's all AI infrastructure, massive corporate consolidation, stuff that basically feels like science fiction.
Yes, but then you look at the actual deal volume.
Right. You dig into the Grata data or that mid-market analysis from PwC, and you find this massive torrential movement of capital flowing into plumbing.
Plumbing, HVAC, landscaping. I know, it feels completely counterintuitive.
It really does.
We are talking about billions of dollars moving into the most unglamorous businesses imaginable, but that disconnect you're feeling, that is exactly what PwC is warning about when they talk about the K-shaped market.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately because K-shaped is one of those economist terms that gets thrown around a lot.
Right. People use it for everything now.
Yeah. Usually when we talk about a K-shape, we're talking about wealth inequality, right?
Right.
Like the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Is that what's happening here in the business buying market?
In M&A specifically for early 2026, it's slightly different. We need to actually visualize the letter K.
Okay, drawing a K in my mind.
You have two lines diverging from a central point. The top arm of the K, that upward trajectory, is driven by speculation and transformation.
Which is the AI arms race.
Exactly. It's the hype economy. It's companies betting their entire existence on a technology that, frankly, might not pay off for 10 years.
So it's high risk, high reward.
Very high risk. It's driven by stock prices and essentially the fear of missing out on the next big AI leap.
Okay, so that's the shiny stuff at the top of the K. What's the bottom arm? Because, bottom usually implies failure.
Right. But in this context, the bottom arm isn't failure at all. It is reality.
Oh, reality.
It's the physical economy. This arm is driven by cash flow, necessity, and, to be honest, a bit of fear about where the world is heading.
How so?
Well, the investors flocking to this bottom arm aren't trying to invent the future. They're trying to survive it. They want assets that pay out today, right now, not in 2035.
So on one hand, you have people betting billions on the future of digital superintelligence.
Yes.
And on the other hand, you have people betting billions on leaking pipes and overgrown lawns.
Essentially, yes.
Wow.
And really, the mission for our deep dive today is to figure out why the smartest money in the room, the private equity titans, the huge strategic acquirers, are suddenly completely obsessed with the guy who fixes your air conditioner.
Why Main Street is suddenly the hottest asset class in 2026.
Exactly.
I've been calling it the unsexy renaissance in my head.
I like that. The unsexy renaissance. It's perfect.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics. We've established that the market is rebounding after a pretty brutal roller coaster year in 2025.
Definitely.
Morgan Stanley says global deal value is up 43%. Optimism is high. But let's look at the specific sectors Grata identified as primed for M&A.
They listed 12 overall, I believe.
Yeah, 12. But the ones that really stood out were the dirty jobs. Let's start with electrical services.
This is probably the clearest example of the entire trend.
Now, obviously, we all use electricity.
Right.
But why is this specific trade suddenly a gold mine for investors? Is it literally just because our light switches keep breaking?
No. It's much bigger than basic maintenance. Think about the macro trends we've seen accelerating. The entire developed world is trying to electrify.
Right.
We are actively trying to move the global economy off fossil fuels and onto the electrical grid.
So we're talking electric vehicles, heat pumps replacing gas furnaces,
induction stoves, and then add in the infrastructure side of it. Solar panels on roofs, battery storage systems in garages.
which requires heavy upgrading.
Exactly. We are fundamentally changing the plumbing of our energy system. Now ask yourself, who actually does that work?
I mean, a guy with a truck and a license.
Correct. It is not a software bot. It is not an AI agent.
Right.
It's a certified electrician who has to physically drive to your house, drill holes in your drywall, and wire the panel. Demand is skyrocketing structurally because of these massive government and societal initiatives.
So the demand is there. That makes total sense. But why buy the businesses?
What do you mean?
Well, why not just start a massive new electrical company? Or why doesn't a big existing corporation just hire thousands of electricians directly?
Because the market is incredibly fragmented. That is the key word for this entire discussion. Fragmentation.
Okay, let's pause right there and really drill down into fragmentation. Why does a fragmented market matter so much to a Wall Street investor?
It matters because of efficiency and pricing power. See, in the electrical market, there is no Starbucks of electricians.
There's no single national brand.
Exactly. There is no dominant player. Instead, you have thousands and thousands of small, independent owners.
The classic mom-and-pop shop.
Right. Maybe they have 3 vans, maybe 10. They run the business out of a spare room or a small leased garage on the edge of town.
Okay, so lots of small players everywhere. How does a private equity firm make billions of dollars off that?
Through a strategy called the roll-up.
The roll-up.
Yeah.
I hear this term constantly in finance, but I really want to understand the actual mechanics of it. Walk me through the math.
Okay, let's play this out. Imagine you are a private equity firm. You find a solid regional electrical company in, say, Austin, Texas. They do maybe $5 million in annual revenue.
Okay, I buy them. That's my platforms.
Exactly. That is your platform business. Now, you go out and find 10 smaller electrical companies in that exact same city, little shops doing maybe $1 million a year, and you buy them all.
So I'm just vacuuming up all the local competition.
You are. You merge them into your original platform. Now, suddenly, you have incredible economies of scale.
Because I don't need 10 different accounting departments.
Precisely. You fire the 10 different bookkeepers and have one central finance department. You consolidate onto one modern billing system. You buy your copper wire and PVC pipes in massive bulk, so you get a 20% discount from the supplier.
Oh, I see.
You instantly create value just by combining them and stripping out the redundant costs.
That makes total sense operationally. You're just cutting the fat.
Hmm.
But there's a financial trick happening here too, isn't there? Something Deloitte calls multiple arbitrage.
Yes, and this is the secret sauce. This is the real reason private equity absolutely loves this strategy.
Break multiple arbitrage down for me.
In the world of buying businesses, you don't just pay a flat price. You pay a multiple of the profit. So a small, risky business like a local electrician with just 3 vans might sell for 3 times their annual profit.
3x.
Right. They are cheap because they are highly risky. If the owner gets sick or decides to retire, the business essentially stops.
Okay, so I go around buying these small guys at a 3x multiple.
Yes, but a large, stable, statewide conglomerate. A company with 500 vans, a professional management team, and sophisticated dispatch software. That business is considered safe and scalable.
And less dependent on one guy.
Exactly. So the broader market might value that massive business at 10 times or even 12 times its profit.
Wait, I think I see where this math is going.
If you buy 10 small companies at a 3x multiple, stitch them all together into one big corporate entity, and then sell that combined company at a 10x multiple.
You've effectively tripled your money without actually having to increase the underlying sales.
You have tripled the value of the asset solely by changing its corporate structure and scale. That is multiple arbitrage.
That is wild. You aren't necessarily fixing any more wires for customers. You're literally just packaging the wire fixers differently for the stock market.
Well, ideally, you are fixing more wires because your consolidated dispatch is much more efficient. But yes, the massive financial gain comes from the size differential. And the Grata report points out that this size is what allows them to bid on the massive stuff. Things like state-level grid modernization projects that a small local shop could literally never touch.
Right, because the government has these billion-dollar infrastructure contracts, and they aren't going to hand that to Bob's Electric.
No, they need a massive corporate entity. They need a partner with huge insurance policies, compliance officers, and 500 trained technicians.
So the roll-up strategy essentially creates the only type of company that can actually fulfill the work the government needs done.
Exactly. It's a perfect alignment of financial engineering and real-world necessity.
Okay, let's move to the next sector on the Grata list. HVAC. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. They described it as completely ripe for acquisition.
HVAC is the absolute darling of private equity right now. If electrical is the growth play because of the energy transition, HVAC is the pure cash flow play.
Just because the planet is getting hotter.
Well, climate change and extreme weather are definitely driving structural demand. When we have these brutal heat domes sitting over the Midwest for weeks, HVAC isn't a luxury anymore. It is life support.
That's true.
If a massive data center's cooling system fails, millions of dollars of servers melt. If a hospital's cooling fails, patient lives are at risk.
So it's officially critical infrastructure now.
It is. But the real financial beauty of HVAC for Wall Street boils down to two words: recurring revenue.
Like service contracts.
Yes. Think about it like a software subscription. We all pay for Netflix or cloud storage every single month.
Right.
Investors absolutely love that subscription model because it's predictable income. Well, HVAC is the closest thing to a SaaS subscription that exists in the physical world.
Pool air as a service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you install a commercial system, you immediately sign a 3 or 5 year contract for maintenance. You send a tech out twice a year, they change the filters, check the freon levels. That is guaranteed cash flow.
And it's sticky, right? That's the term they use.
Very sticky, meaning customers rarely ever switch providers.
Why is that?
Because once you have a relationship with an HVAC company and they know the quirks of your specific building system, unless they really screw up horribly, you just keep paying them year after year. It's a very stable annuity.
And Grata specifically mentions it's recession resistant, which makes sense. I mean, if the economy tanks in 2027, I might not buy a new car and I'll probably cancel my vacation. But if the AC breaks in July...
You find the money.
Yeah, you fix it.
It is non-discretionary spending. In a volatile economy, and remember, even with the 2026 rebound, we are still seeing some wobbly indicators globally. Investors desperately want to own things that people have to buy.
It's so interesting. You look at these businesses, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and they seem so mundane, everyday stuff. But when you look at them through this specific financial lens, they look like municipal bonds.
They look like guaranteed yield, exactly.
Right.
They are basically bonds with high growth potential attached.
Which brings us to the third one Grata highlighted, which honestly was the one that surprised me the most. Landscaping.
Ah, yes.
I mean, cutting grass, trimming hedges. How is that a high-growth M&A target for a multi-billion-dollar fund?
It is the ultimate recurring revenue model. Think about it. Grass grows. It needs cutting every single week.
Nature's subscription service.
Exactly. It doesn't care about the Federal Reserve's interest rates. It doesn't care about trade tariffs. It just grows.
That's a great point.
And Grata points out that with the huge boom in real estate development over the last decade, both commercial parks and residential communities, there is significantly more outdoor living space to maintain than ever before.
But again, I'm assuming the big play here is the roll-up, because it's a fragmented industry.
Extremely fragmented, so the exact same math we talked about applies. Buy a bunch of small regional landscapers, combine them, secure the commercial contracts, and sell the massive company for a higher multiple.
Plus, I'd imagine with landscaping, there's a ton of operational inefficiency you could fix with a little tech.
Oh, absolutely. Better route planning software, centralized equipment purchasing. The profit margins can be improved significantly just by professionalizing the back office.
So we have the what investors are aggressively buying dirty jobs.
Yeah.
And we have the financial why fragmentation and multiple arbitrage. But I feel like reading through these reports, there is a bigger, almost philosophical why here. A strategic rationale that goes way beyond just the spreadsheet math.
You're touching on the insulation from AI argument, and honestly, this is where the conversation gets incredibly interesting.
Yeah, because we spend so much of our time worrying about AI taking our jobs.
Yeah.
You know, will this new language model replace the copywriter? Will the AI agent replace the junior data analyst?
Right.
But in the M&A world, that anxiety is flipped.
In the M&A world, the absolute inability of AI to do the job is becoming the primary selling point of the business.
We talked about this briefly in the intro, but let's go much deeper. Is this a permanent shift in how capital views labor?
There is a very deep structural point here that the Bain report touches on. We spent the last 20, maybe 30 years operating under this cultural assumption that knowledge work was the absolute peak of the economic value chain.
Right. Learn to code. Go to law school. Work with your head, not your hands. That's where the safety and the money was.
And physical labor was broadly viewed as a commodity, something that would eventually be automated away by robotics or outsourced to cheaper overseas markets. But what we are seeing clearly in 2026 is a valuation flip.
A flip, Meaning what?
Well, if I am an investor today and I'm looking at a mid-level coding firm or a corporate translation agency, generative AI is a direct existential threat to their profit margin.
Because why pay a human $100 an hour when an AI does it for 3 cents?
Exactly, the margin collapses. But if I am looking at an HVAC technician fixing a broken compressor on a commercial roof in 100-degree heat,
You're completely untouchable.
we call this the physical moat. AI operates exclusively in the digital realm. It has zero agency in the physical world. It cannot turn a wrench. It cannot deal with a rusted bolt that is stripped on a 40-year-old furnace.
Right. It's the messiness of reality.
Exactly. The physical world is messy, it's unpredictable, and it's totally non-standard. That messiness is the ultimate defense against AI disruption.
So capital is actively fleeing the generated laudable economy, things AI can instantly create, and it's hiding in the physical economy.
It is a massive flight to tangibility. When the digital world becomes infinite and incredibly cheap, the physical world becomes scarce and highly expensive.
So buying a Main Street landscaping business is actually a sophisticated hedge against the tech singularity. It's basically a bet that says, I don't know what supercomputers will be able to do in 5 years, but I know for a fact they won't be able to physically unclog a toilet in Cleveland.
That is exactly the thesis. It's a flight to safety.
I want to zoom out a bit. We've looked at the specific service sectors, but there are some massive macro pressures pushing investors this way too. The McKinsey report talks a lot about this thing they call the geopolitical nerve center.
Which I admit sounds like the title of a Tom Clancy spy thriller.
It really does. But they're basically talking about trade tensions, sweeping tariffs, and global supply chains, right?
Yes. We have to be very realistic about the state of the world in 2026. It is messy. We have escalating trade wars. We have new tariff regimes. We have critical international shipping lanes being disrupted.
Right.
If you are a global manufacturer relying on specialized parts sourced from 3 different continents, your business model is incredibly risky right now.
Your entire supply chain could snap overnight because of a new policy or localized conflict halfway around the world.
Exactly. But now look at the local electrician or the regional plumber.
They operate in a 20-mile radius.
They buy their PVC pipes and copper wire from a local wholesale distributor. Their end customers are all local homeowners and businesses. They are a purely domestic service.
So they honestly don't care what's happening in the South China Sea.
I mean, as citizens, they might care personally, but their business model doesn't collapse because a cargo ship gets delayed. McKinsey calls this domestic safety.
Domestic safety.
Investors are actively looking for assets that are fully immune to global geopolitical chaos.
So buying a local service business is essentially a geopolitical safety play.
It is a way to functionally decouple your investment money from international relations. If you own a massive plumbing conglomerate in Ohio, you are relatively insulated from a trade war with Asia.
That makes a lot of sense. Then there's this other massive pressure, which comes from the investors themselves, the dry powder problem. Morgan Stanley has some really staggering numbers here.
This is arguably one of the most important numbers in the entire global economy right now. $4.3 trillion.
$4.3 trillion. That is the amount of dry powder, meaning unspent cash, that private equity firms are just sitting on globally.
And we need to explain why this actually matters. Because to a normal person, having $4.3 trillion in cash sitting around sounds like a fantastic problem to have. Like, oh no, I have too much money.
Right. Why is it a problem?
Yeah.
Why not just keep it in the bank, earn some interest, and wait for the perfect deal?
Because of how the private equity business model fundamentally works. These firms raise money from giant pension funds, university endowments, sovereign wealth funds, and they charge fees for doing it.
Right.
Usually they charge a management fee, say 2% on the total amount of money they manage. But there's a huge catch.
There's always a catch in finance.
They have a strict deployment period, usually 3 to 5 years. If they don't invest that money, if they don't go out and buy companies with it within that specific window, they often have to give the money back to the investors.
And if they give it back,
they immediately stop earning those management fees. And even worse, they look completely incompetent. If a massive pension fund hands you $1 billion to invest, and 5 years later you hand it right back and say, sorry, couldn't find anything good to buy, they are never giving you money again.
So the money is literally burning a hole in their pocket. They absolutely have to spend it.
It is a massive pressure cooker. They are on a ticking clock. But here is the major problem. Those massive tech megadeals we talked about at the top of the K.
Yeah.
They are incredibly expensive right now. And there is intense regulatory scrutiny. The FTC and the DOJ are watching those big billion-dollar corporate mergers like a hawk.
So if you can't spend $10 billion buying a tech company because the government might block the deal,
Yeah.
and you still have to spend the money before your timer runs out, where do you go?
You go downstream. You go directly to the middle market. You flood into Main Street.
Because it's under the radar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can deploy hundreds of millions of dollars rolling up 60 different HVAC companies across the Midwest without triggering the same level of antitrust alarm bells that you would if you tried to merge two massive software giants.
It's the path of least resistance for that $4.3 trillion.
It's exactly like a dam breaking. The water has to go somewhere. If the main channel is blocked by the FTC, it floods all the smaller tributaries. That is what we are seeing. A literal flood of sophisticated institutional capital into local physical services.
Morgan Stanley also points out another unique dynamic in their report, the inventory issue.
Right. They specifically mentioned there are roughly 13,000 sponsor-backed companies that have been held too long.
Explain that for us. What does held too long actually mean in this context?
Okay, usually a private equity firm wants to buy a company, fix it up, improve the margins, and sell it to someone else in 3 to 5 years. That's the standard cycle.
Buy, hold, sell.
But because 2024 and 2025 were so macroeconomically volatile, interest rates were moving up and down, valuations were weird, inflation was stubborn, these firms just held on to their companies. They sat on their hands waiting for better conditions.
So now in 2026, they have this huge backlog.
They have a massive glut of inventory, 13,000 mature companies that they desperately need to sell so they can return cash to their own investors.
Wow. So you have massive pressure to sell on one side, the inventory, and massive pressure to buy on the other side, the dry powder.
It is a perfect storm for transaction volume. Everyone at the table wants to make a deal happen.
Which creates a very liquid, very active market.
Yeah.
And a huge portion of those 13,000 companies are in these unsexy industrial and service sectors.
Exactly.
I want to pivot back to AI for a second here, because we said earlier that these businesses are insulated from AI. But the PwC and Bain reports suggest it's not just about protection. It's actually about enablement.
This is the critical nuance that really separates a shallow headline analysis from a true deep dive. We aren't saying AI has absolutely zero impact on Main Street.
Right.
We're saying it doesn't replace the core physical service, but it dramatically improves the business model wrapped around that service.
Grata calls this the difference between building AI and using AI.
Exactly. The Main Street M&A play is entirely about efficiency. Let's go back to that hypothetical HVAC roll-up we imagined earlier. You have 500 vans on the road across Texas.
Right, the big consolidated platform.
In a typical traditional mom-and-pop operation, the dispatch system is literally a guy named Steve with a whiteboard and a two-way radio.
Unit 4, go to 5th Street. Oh, wait, Unit 4 is on their lunch break.
Exactly. It is incredibly inefficient. Technicians constantly crisscross the city, wasting fuel, sitting in traffic. They arrive at a job and realize they don't even have the right replacement part in the truck, so they have to drive all the way back to the wholesale warehouse.
Which is just money burning up in gas and lost hourly time.
Now, you apply an enterprise AI layer to that consolidated platform. The AI predicts the traffic patterns, it optimizes the daily route to save fuel, but much more importantly, it uses something called predictive supply chain.
How does it actually work in practice?
The AI analyzes the incoming service request. Say a customer calls and says their AC is making a loud rattling noise and blowing warm air. The AI instantly looks at the specific make and model of the unit installed at that address, cross-references it with thousands of historical data points, and predicts with 90% accuracy which specific part is broken.
So it tells the technician, hey, put this exact compressor in the truck before you leave the depot.
Exactly. That saves an entire wasted trip. That increases the number of jobs one technician can complete in a single day from 4 to 5.
Which is a massive jump.
That is a 25% increase in top-line revenue with literally zero extra headcount.
That is huge margin expansion. That's pure profit.
And that is exactly why the big companies get bigger. A small mom-and-pop shop cannot afford a custom AI predictive dispatch system. They are living in what analysts call a data desert. They literally keep their customer records in spiral notebooks.
But the private equity-backed conglomerate with 500 vans.
They digitize absolutely everything. They turn that spiral notebook into a trainable data set. And once you have proprietary data from 50,000 separate service calls, you have a competitive advantage that the small guy simply can't touch.
So the Main Street business doesn't get replaced by AI. It gets supercharged by it, but only if it has the scale to afford the tech.
Correct. Technology is actually driving the consolidation. If you want the best tech tools to survive, you have to be big enough to afford the enterprise license.
It's fascinating. It's like the robot isn't coming for your job, but the robot is definitely going to be your manager.
Or your dispatcher and your inventory manager.
Let's look at another sector Grata highlighted, construction and engineering. This ties back into the whole infrastructure theme, right?
It does. And again, the driving force here is complexity. Construction projects in 2026 are incredibly complex compared to 20 years ago. You have strict new green building standards, smart building sensor tech, massive regulatory hurdles, carbon footprint reporting.
So the days of a general contractor just hiring a few buddies to build a commercial space are over.
For big commercial and public projects, yes, completely over. Large corporate buyers are eagerly snapping up niche engineering firms and specialty contractors. Grata specifically notes that complex projects now require multidisciplinary teams.
Like an Avengers team of construction workers.
You need the guy who knows sustainable, low-carbon concrete. You need the electrical engineer who understands smart grid integration. You need the specialist in severe weather retrofitting.
And you just can't freelance that out anymore.
It's far too risky to rely on subcontractors for the critical stuff. To compete for the really big public contracts, the federal infrastructure bills, the statewide grid modernization stuff, you need all those specialties securely in-house.
You need to present a unified front to the government.
Exactly. So we are seeing massive consolidation in the engineering and specialty trades, too.
And what about the supply chain side? Grata mentions logistics and the last mile as major targets.
This connects directly back to the nearshoring trend we discussed with the geopolitical stuff. If we are aggressively bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., which the data shows we are, we need physical ways to move those newly domestic goods around.
We need warehouses, we need trucks.
We need massive regional distribution centers. But specifically, Grata points to the last mile.
Which is the final step to the consumer.
Yes. In a world where e-commerce is still a massive growth engine, getting the package from the local distribution hub to your actual front porch is the most expensive, a complex part of the entire chain.
It's always the bottleneck.
Right. So investors want to own the critical nodes of the domestic supply chain. If you own the specialized warehouse that serves the entire tri-state area, you have a very valuable, very tangible asset that simply cannot be bypassed.
Because, again, it's physical. You can't email a new refrigerator. Someone physically has to move it in a truck.
And that physical necessity creates lasting value.
I want to shift gears slightly to the human side of all this. We've talked extensively about the buyers, the massive PE firms with their trillions in dry powder. But who exactly are the sellers? Who is the guy selling his HVAC company right now, and why is he choosing to sell today?
This is a huge, often overlooked part of the 2026 economic story. We are currently witnessing a massive, historic, generational transfer of wealth. They call it the silver tsunami.
The baby boomers.
Yes. Think about when many of these successful Main Street businesses were originally started. The late 70s, the 80s, the early 90s.
So those original founders are now in their 60s or 70s.
Exactly. They are exhausted. They want to retire. They want to move to Florida. They want to play golf and spend time with their grandkids. And crucially, their own kids often do not want to take over the family business.
Right, because the kids went off to college, became graphic designers or corporate accountants, and they have absolute zero desire to run a 20-van plumbing company.
Exactly. So you have a massive succession crisis playing out across the country. The founder has to sell because there is no internal successor to hand the keys to.
So you literally have this enormous natural supply of profitable businesses hitting the open market exactly at the moment when the demand from Wall Street investors is peaking.
It is a truly perfect meeting of supply and demand. You have the dry powder, which is the demand slamming right into the silver tsunami, which is the supply.
But Morgan Stanley brings up an interesting twist here that I hadn't considered. They talk about something called minority capital. What if the founder isn't completely ready to fully retire? What if they still love the business but just want to take some chips off the table?
This is a rapidly growing trend, and it really shows how much the mid-market is maturing. It used to be entirely all or nothing. The PE firm would come in and say, we buy 100% of your company, here's a check, pack up your desk, you walk away today.
Which honestly has to be terrifying for an owner who built this thing from scratch over 30 years.
Right. It's their baby. It's their legacy in the community. Now, PE firms are getting much more creative and flexible. They are aggressively buying non-control stakes.
You just buy a piece of it.
Right. Maybe they buy 30 or 40% to inject growth capital, or they buy a majority stake, say 60%. But they keep the original founder on as the CEO with what they call rollover equity.
Rollover equity. Break that down.
Okay, the founder takes, say, 70% of his total payout in cash on day one. He secures his retirement, maybe buys the lake house, but he keeps 30% of his wealth invested in the new, bigger, consolidated company.
So he still has serious skin in the game.
Exactly. And if the roll-up strategy works, if they pull off that multiple arbitrage we talked about earlier, that remaining 30% could eventually be worth significantly more than his original 100% stake.
Wow. That is a very compelling pitch to a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Sell to us, get rich right now, and then get even richer later.
And for the investor, it solves a huge operational problem. Managing these local service businesses is incredibly hard. It's heavily relationship-based.
Right. The customers trust Bob, not some faceless equity fund in New York.
Exactly. If you fire the founder on day one, the key employees might quit, and the long-term customers might leave. So they keep the founder as the face of the business.
They get exposure to a high-growth, founder-led business without the headache of actually running the day-to-day operations. It sounds much more collaborative than the old corporate raider stereotype from the 80s.
In the best cases, yes, it's a true partnership. But we have to be realistic here. It's not all sunshine and roses out there.
Right, let's talk about the risks, because every investment trend has a downside. The Deloitte report explicitly highlights something they call a valuation gap.
This is the classic standoff in any market. Sellers, those retiring business owners, often look at the hyped-up headlines, or they hear rumors at the country club about what their buddy sold his company for back in 2021 when money was basically free.
And they think, my business is worth $10 million.
Right. But the buyer is looking at the current interest rates, looking at the operational risks, and doing the hard math. And the buyer says, actually, the math says your company is worth $7 million.
And that gap just kills the deal.
It freezes everything. Deloitte notes that this gap is slowly narrowing as interest rates have stabilized this year, and sellers are finally getting a bit more realistic. But it is still a major friction point. Deals are taking significantly longer to close simply because they are haggling over the price for months.
And then there is the government to consider. We touched on this briefly with the megadeals, but Morgan Stanley and McKinsey both explicitly mention regulatory scrutiny for these much smaller deals too. I honestly thought the FTC only cared if, like, Amazon tried to buy the moon. Do they really care if I buy a bunch of plumbing companies in Cleveland?
They are definitely starting to, and this is a major regulatory shift. The FTC and the Department of Justice are increasingly wary of these exact roll-up strategies that monopolize local markets.
So if I buy literally every single plumbing company in one zip code,
then you have absolute pricing power. You can just jack up the rates for a basic service call because the consumers have absolutely no alternative choice. The government refers to this as aggregate anti-competitive effect.
they saw this exact same thing happen in healthcare over the last decade, right?
Exactly. Private equity bought up all the anesthesiology practices, emergency room staffing firms, veterinary clinics. Consumer prices skyrocketed. The government finally noticed.
So now they're applying that same lens to blue-collar stuff.
Right. Now they're looking at other critical sectors like local HVAC and construction and saying, wait a minute, are you systematically creating a local monopoly under the radar?
So the roll-up strategy isn't just a free-for-all anymore. You have to be very careful not to get too dominant in any one specific geography.
Correct. It adds a whole new layer of legal complexity and risk to the entire strategy. You have to map out your acquisitions very carefully.
And finally, looking at the risks, McKinsey mentions the AI winter scenario.
Right. This is the ultimate counter-narrative to the massive tech boom we're seeing at the top of the K. What happens if the AI bubble actually bursts? What if all those hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into massive data centers don't generate a tangible return on investment anytime soon?
If the tech sector crashes hard, does that just drag Main Street down with it?
It could definitely freeze capital markets generally. If the big institutional investors panic, liquidity dries up and everything slows down. But, and this is the absolute key to the whole thesis, Main Street businesses are technically a built-in hedge against this exact scenario.
Because even if the hottest AI startup goes totally bust,
the toilet still flushes, the commercial roof still leaks and needs patching, the grass in the office park still grows.
So while a broad financial crash hurts everyone across the board, these service businesses are fundamentally better positioned to weather an AI winter than the tech sector itself.
They have a hard physical floor. A software company with no actual revenue can easily go to zero overnight. An electrical company with 5,000 recurring local customers has a hard floor on its valuation.
So bringing this all together, we started this deep dives looking at the headline about the huge M&A rebound and those flashy billion-dollar AI tech deals. But the real substantive story seems to be this profound bifurcation of the economy.
That is the perfect word for it, bifurcation. You have the trillion-dollar digital economy, high risk, high reward, massive capital expenditures, and you have the tangible physical economy Main Street services.
And the real aha moment for me today is that the absolute smartest money out there isn't necessarily just chasing the next big language model. It's quietly chasing the guy who fixes the AC at the data center housing that language model.
That is perfectly put. Stability, recurring revenue, and immunity to geopolitical trade wars. Those are the three core pillars making domestic service businesses the absolute hidden gems of the 2026 M&A market.
It really changes how you look at the world when you're just driving down the street. You see a beat-up white van with an extension ladder on top, and instead of just thinking, oh great, traffic, you think, target asset.
You see a highly resilient cash flow machine protected by an impenetrable physical moat.
So, here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We spend so much of our collective time worrying if AI will inevitably take all our jobs. We constantly agonize over this looming digital future. But looking strictly at the actual flow of money, the trillions of dollars urgently seeking a safe home right now, the businesses being bought up most aggressively are the ones that require dirty hands and trucks.
It really raises a fundamental question about what we value as a society.
Does this whole trend suggest that in a fully digital, AI-saturated future, the only thing that truly retains premium value is the physical world?
I think that is a very real possibility. When digital content becomes infinite and essentially free to generate, physical reality becomes the ultimate luxury and the ultimate necessity.
Something to definitely think about the next time you have to call the plumber. Well, that is it for this deep dive into the dual realities of the 2026 M&A market. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you from all of us at Murphy Business Sales for taking the time to learn about this important topic. We look forward to working together to achieve your business aspirations. For more information or a complimentary consultation for sell-side services, visit us at murphybusiness.com/Edison and complete our Contact Us form.